Right about now, we move into our first panel discussion, which is going to be on the future of digital development. And helping us do that, the moderator for this section is no other person than the Senior Director, Digital Program from the Catholic Relief Service. Ladies and gentlemen, help me make welcome our moderator for this section, Nora Lindstrom. Let's show her some love as she takes a seat. Joining us as one of the panelists is no other person than the co-founder of We Robotics. No other person coming on stage as the first panelist than Sonja Betchat. Hello, let's show her some love. Joining us on stage as the second panelist for the day is the Chief Operating Officer for SOS Children's Villages. Help me make welcome Dr. Deepmala. Joining us as a panelist, serving as the Chief Executive Officer of our kitchenette, Grace Ketenga. Let's show her some love. Joining as the last person for this discussion is the Chief of Digital Center of Excellence from UNICEF, Theo Meng. Please show her some love as they take their seat. So, Nora, over to you.
This is on? Yes, we're on. Wonderful. Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here with all of you, friends and friends-to-be, because we're really a community. And bear with me as I control my nerves and my excitement over being here. I think Carl's really sort of outlined the moment that we're in. We're in a moment of contraction, we're a sector under pressure, communities under pressure, and digital really moving faster than we can keep up with, right? So I don't want to repeat that framing, but what I want to do with this wonderful panel here is to push it a step further, because I think ultimately the questions that we're talking about are about power, they're about accountability, and they're about ownership. They're about whether localization means a genuine shift in decision-making, whether digital transformation is grounded in community realities, and whether we're investing as seriously in people and institutions as we are in products and platforms. And that's why this conversation matters. The panel is not here to offer a single answer or a polished consensus. We have a lot of topics, and we won't get to the bottom of them. But they're here to surface some of the tensions underneath the conference themes that we'll talk about over the next 3 days. Where the opportunities are real, where the risks are being underestimated, and what it will take to build digital futures that are not only more efficient or optimized, but more equitable and more sustainable. So the question I want to put to this group is this: what does responsible, locally grounded digital development look like in this moment of constraint and contraction? So I'm joined by 4 people with very different perspectives on this question. Sonja, Deepmala, Grace, Fumeng, thank you so much for joining this panel. They don't all see the questions the same way, and that's why we're having this conversation. So let's get into it. Grace, I want to start with you. You're here as one of the leading voices of digital rights and digital governance in Kenya. Can you start us off by telling us, what the funding cuts have looked like for you in your work with KicToNet and the communities that you serve?
Okay, thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. I was sitting at the front, so I didn't realize there's so many people in the room, and I'm sitting here and thinking, oh my goodness, okay. I work or I lead a team at an organization called KicToNet. Initially, it used to be Kenya ICT Action Network, but we dropped the full name because then our work has actually gone beyond Kenya. So we are in Africa, we are even, like globally, we are doing data protection work, and therefore we thought that the name might limit us. So we just agreed we are KICTANET. So we are a multi-stakeholder think tank that works in ICT policy and regulation, and we work through 4 key areas. One is research, researching a tech component that is of concern to people. We do policy advocacy, we do stakeholder engagement, and we do capacity building. And I think our ICT4D comes a lot in the capacity building, because we are working with local communities. In 2024, we trained over 600,000 people in digital skilling, drawn from what we call the counties. Between last year and end of March this year, we trained another I think 800,000 still on digital skilling, getting them online, getting them to know that they can actually work in that area. And we also worked very well with the Ministry of ICT on AI policy formulation, a process that is still ongoing. So what the funding meant for us is that we had actually just gotten a grant from USAID through CARE, and we were going to work in 10 Kenyan counties with women, ordinary women, to get them to learn how to utilize the internet for economic purposes. And we were so excited just at the prospect, because we had already done our recce. We'd gone to markets, we had identified how women are using the different mobile apps that are provided in this country for them to be able to save. What has happened is that every morning, especially those in the markets, go to online, to the mobile money apps and actually take a loan to buy stuff that they need to sell. And then they sell, and in the evening, they repay back the loan. So it's cyclic. They simply are not growing when you compare to what men in similar situations are doing. And so, men will go for bigger loans, they will put in bigger business opportunities, but women seemed to then just be there. So our grant was going to train them on how to be bold, on how to ensure that they do maintain and repay their loans, but at the same time grow in businesses. And so when we were just getting in, we got that email. I'm sure most of you got that email on a Saturday. For us, it was Saturday morning. And when it came, I panicked, because I thought, because we had delayed in implementation, the stop work order had come because of that. And I read the first line. I didn't even have the guts to read the rest of the email. And I sent my colleagues an email and told them, have you seen breaking news? What's the problem? Is it that we have not implemented? And I was so afraid to finish reading that email. Then 3 hours later, I gained confidence, and I went back to read the email. And as I was reading the email, then I realized so many of our partners had actually gotten the same email. So I stopped panicking and realized this was another modern day COVID moment. And we had just been discussing, if COVID ever happened, what next? And then the stop work order came, and we were thinking a modern day COVID. So what that meant is that our work in the 10 counties could not go on. Our work to build the skills for ordinary communities could not go on. Our work in creating impact in the communities that brings about ICT4D impact was affected. And therefore, that means that the impact, even to be scaled, did not happen. The other thing is that we were shocked. So, as you know, when you are shocked, sometimes if you don't respond in a rapid response, then you lose time. So we were sitting shocked. What do we do? How do we, redeem this project? The next thing we realize, 4 months have passed, 6 months have passed, and we need to wake up. So what next? And so that actually did affect how we are doing the work. So we sat down, we are rethinking, and we are reworking with CARE. And what happens is that, yes, you'll go on, but you won't do your 10 counties, you'll only be able to do 3 counties. So again, that affected that. But I think what is more important is that the struggle now for resources is real, especially for people working in development, and not just for ICT4D. I think it's, development in general, and I think we will need to go back, we need to strategize and think what next if a third COVID, modern day COVID, hits us, because nobody ever thought Trump would play that, such a game. Yeah.
Thanks, Grace. I think real impacts on bridging the digital gender divide, on the digital empowerment of women that you're describing there. Feng Meng, I want to move on to you. UNICEF was cut by 25%, and you've gone through a major reorganization that must just have been really painful. You have a new strategic plan, and in that strategic plan, you call digital transformation an accelerator. Can you tell us more about how your view of digital transformation maybe has shifted through the experiences of the past year or so?
Thank you, Nora, and good morning, everyone. Just like Grace, I turn around and say, hey, there are a lot of familiar faces and new faces here, and thank goodness that everyone is here. So UNICEF is a child rights organization and a United Nations agencies. Last year, when the cut starts, we weren't the only one that got impacted. Everyone did, including everyone in the room. So like what Nora was mentioning, one of the key things that we do, or we are doing still, is to reflect on how UNICEF as a global organization, which has footprint in more than 160 offices, with our offices on the ground and supporting not only government, children, and also working with a lot of organizations like yourself to push our agenda on deliver impact for children. So we're rethinking about, so this is a drastic change. How do we use this as an opportunity and not waste this change? So one of the things that we looked at is that we have massive gap because of the funding. At the same time, we saw that we need to be more nimble. So this 25% cut reflected into our organizational restructure. There's a lot goes behind the restructuring, but in UNICEF, just like a lot of other UN agencies, we started by our strategic plan. The strategic plan guides us to our next 4 years of planning. One of the key things that we realize is that digital is no longer just enabling the work that we do on the ground for children. We recognize that digital transformation and innovation needs to be an accelerator. Why? Just look at the trend that we're seeing. We're seeing that more and more governments, as a matter of fact, more than 60 governments have an AI policy. AI policy is part of digital transformation. It's just the tools that are accelerating it. And we're seeing that the governments are actually moving faster than us. A lot of the times when we go out and talk to government officials, John included, their thinking is much more advanced than us. So we're like, well, we definitely are seeing that we need to meet where our constituents and stakeholders are at. We need to accelerate, and that comes into our strategic plan. It's not only that, we recognize that internally, UNICEF as an organization, we're probably a bit more very comfortable with where we were at. So getting the entire UNICEF up to speed about what does digital means in programmatic results, what does AI means for accelerating efficiencies, operational excellence, and things like that, is a task in front of us that we actually take this very, very seriously. So internally, we are also doing a lot of capacity building. To your point, Grace, capacity building in the community is as important as the organization that we are in, that we need to get people to understand when the Ministry of ICT, Ministry of Health come to us and say, hey, we want to think about how might AI help the healthcare workers in the front line to do their job better. We need to be ahead of that game. Not only just thinking about solutioning, but it's also thinking about how do we safeguard, how do we make sure that we protect the data, how do we make sure that we protect the system. So for us, we see this as the funding cut, as an opportunity for us to reinvent ourselves, as an opportunity for us to re-anchor the organization so that we can move faster to meet the government's need.
Thanks, Fui Meng. So quick reactions, Sonia and Deepmala. I want to get to this is the warm-up, so we'll get to the hard questions. But what do you think is the undertold story here that we haven't talked about yet? What do you want to add to this conversation that we had? Let's start with you, Sonia, and then go to Deepmala.
Thank you, Nora, and thank you for having me here. Adding to that, I think there's several parts of an undertold story from my point of view. The first one I would say is we should never forget that technologies are a tool and that it's people building solutions. So including the people part is very, very important. Thinking or building on that, another good thing to remember is that technologies, especially technologies like AI, are exponential. People, systems, policies, we're linear. We're never going to be exponential. So this creates a speed issue between technology and us. Even more so when technology is pushed on people. It pushes us to make bad choices. It pushes us to think that the value lies in the technology and not the people. And I think rethinking investments, not just in technology, not just in technology infrastructure, but also in people infrastructure, is the undertold story today.
Thanks, Sonia. Deepmala?
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. And yes, I was here and I realize it's a lot of people. I think reactions on that, one thing is when we are talking about digital transformation, let's deal with the harder question. Not only about how can technology help us do things faster, better, cheaper, bigger, but what happens when it gets things wrong. Because the cost of failure is not the same for everybody. In stable settings, bad technology may mean inefficiency, inconvenience, annoying, payment may be delayed, an entire team might be frustrated, we might lose some money. But in fragile settings, if a mother's biometric has not matched, she will not get food for her family for the whole month. If a child across multiple borders, his digital identity could not be reconciled, no school. And remember, this mother and this child already had very, very, very little. The technology could be the same. The same technology can create a very, very helpful feedback form. And at the same technology can result into a protection failure. So the technology could be same, but the consequences are not. And that, colleagues and friends, is the undertold story. The asymmetry of consequences. So the real question is not only, is the technology innovative and useful, but who will pay the price when things will go wrong? Nora?
Thanks, Nirmala. So we're going to move on to the harder questions, and I want to continue with you because when we spoke before the panel, you said that a lot of what we frame as technology questions are in fact power questions, right? And you started talking about that, who decides, who's accountable, who benefits, who bears the risk. How do you implement that understanding of tech questions really being power questions in your work at SOS with children and young people?
Thank you, Nora. And that is, in some ways, the crux of the conversation, because in our sector, and Carl spoke about localization, in our sector, technology, is it technical only? Most often, technology, it's not just technical. It decides things. It often decides who gets the service, who is seen, who is delayed or left waiting, and who is quietly excluded. So then, when we are talking about digital transformation, transformation for who and under whose control? This we really need to understand, question, discuss, deliberate, and honest conversations. Transformation for who asked for it, and under whose control. So let's say for children, young people, vulnerable communities, refugees, this question is of particular seriousness because, as I say, a case file, it's a life story. A protection record is a history of their vulnerability. The digitalized ID, which is accepted by the systems, is the key for a child for food, education, healthcare. So clearly, it's much bigger than a system. It is much, much, much bigger than a system. So now, all these people for whom this can be so consequential, you would agree with me, those are the ones with least influence, let alone control over what is being done, when, how, and where. Right? So a donor will fund the system, an implementing organization will design it and implement it, a vendor will create it or design it, but the communities, vulnerable communities, children and young people live with those consequences. So when the system went wrong, the question, yes, it is important, but the question should not be, was there a technological error? That's an important question. Should we stop there? No. We should ask, who can challenge it? Who is positioned to challenge it, question it, and change it? For example, if a mother or a child is wrongly excluded from the service, there should be somebody to fix it. There should be somebody reachable. There has to be somebody answerable. There has to be somebody accountable. Accountable to make it work for who? For whom it was designed in the first place. So this is somewhere all of us, the humanitarian and development sectors, our tech partners, private sector, we have a lot of work to do here. We have a lot of work to do it here. We are very good at creating systems, I want to believe. We have gotten better. Clear accountability. That's something we have more work to do. The risks seem to be passed around. The donor will say, and I think most of us in this room have experienced it, the donor will say it's an implementation issue. The vendor will say user issue, and the implementer will say a policy or design issue. But remember, that child is still stuck. That's what the child, and if he has a family, that's what they think about all day. So is this responsible digital development? Not really. No. Responsible digital development will be before we collect the child's data, before we automate the decision, before we bring AI into care or humanitarian services, we are clear on few things. Who will fix it? Who can say no? and who can actually be answerable when things are not done in a proper way. Where are these questions? Where do these belong? Of course, in discourses and conferences like this, but these should be asked in the design, in the contract, in the budget, places where it actually matters. And that's, I'll bring an important word here, co-creation and governance. We are good at consultation. We have improved a lot. We invite young people, we invite vulnerable communities, we take their inputs, but the decision is with us. We need to move further from that. And let me end by saying that there are tremendous examples where some progress has been made, but the future of digital development cannot be decided only by those who can fund it, who can code it, who can manage it. It should be shaped by those who live with the consequences. So Nora, let me pass it back to you by saying, otherwise we will not be transforming power, simply we will be digitalizing it.
Thanks, Deepmala. And I think we'll come back to this question of like who designs, who is in the room when digital systems are designed. But I want to go to you, Phui Meng. In your work with governments, UNICEF, how do you see this interplay sort of between technology and power?
Just one word. It has been interesting. So, because of our global footprint, we also are very fortunate to work with different ministries in each and every country. One of the key trends that we see is that Ministry of ICT or Ministry of DX and, same naming convention, they are normally the new kids on the block. They are the most recent ministries, as opposed to Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, and so forth, that are very, very established and pretty deep pocket as well. So you can imagine that when Ministry of Health says that, hey, I want to implement an information management system, sometimes they'll bring their own team. And Ministry of ICT and other ministry that might not as deep pocket might not have that resources. So that's what from our angle, the power play between government agencies and so forth. And I'm sure you'll share, your experience working with different ministries. How might UNICEF actually get across the power play and really bring the right ministries on the table to talk about the important topic of how do we deliver impact for children? It's about children. Breaking down the silos between the different ministries to think about, hey, when you have a digital ID that might be built by the Ministry of ICT, how might that actually allow the child be able to register for their legal ID if they are being born in a clinic and so forth? That takes Home Affairs and Ministry of ICT and Ministry of Health working together to actually think through that life journey of a child. And on top of that, one of the things that we find it very, very important and very, very useful when we kind of try to diffuse the power play when we work with governments is really the child rights angle as well. Not only a journey of a child, but we have, as all the countries in the world and the governments in the world sign up for the Convention Rights of the Children, and this is a statutory obligations for the governments and the countries of the world that is ratified in the United Nations system. So that become one of the very powerful quote-unquote contract that we have with the governments to bring different ministries together and say that, I understand health education, you might have your different priorities, different resources, but this is where we need to look at a journey of a child and make sure that every life journey of a child is being comprehended. So that's our experiences coming from UNICEF perspective.
Thanks, Phui Meng. I want to move to another really important P in our work that's been mentioned a couple of times already, which is good, that people, right? And Sonia, you've made this argument that I really think everyone should hear in this room, right? That at the moment, we're investing 80% in technology and 20% in people, but that it's actually the 20% who drive 80% of the impact. So talk us through that and tell us more about how you at We Robotics are implementing sort of that realization that you need to invest in people.
Thank you, Nora. And I actually think the 20% is today mainly capacity building and not even investing in the people infrastructure. Sounds very simple, but it's actually not that simple. And that's what we're thinking about when we talk about people infrastructures. How can we put an infrastructure around collaborations between local and global actors? Who decides, who owns, who finances, and who supports? And from our point of view, to make technology in the development sector really work and last, the decision-making, the leading, and the financing or co-financing needs to come from the local perspective. And global actors like ourselves, we're here to support. We're here to connect, to create opportunities, but it's not for us to lead. It's not for us, again, to decide. And this kind of defeats, in many ways, what has been said before is also not for us to finance. It's for us potentially to co-finance, but it's for local governments and local organizations to finance if there's really value in technology. Which brings me to kind of a different point, and then I want to make an example, is to say, today, technology is very much pushed. So in the traditional kind of sector, it is projects. We push technology from a local stage from a global stage to a local stage to the people out in the communities, but it's still a push. It's not the communities asking for the technology. I call this a pull, and I think this needs to deeply change. What we have done over the last 10 years is make it a pull. Put out a value proposition, and if local communities are interested, then they know who to go to. It's a very different directionality. And it's going way further than just a localization kind of piece to say, not just about local actors, it's about who decides to actually want what kind of technology. And so building these collaborative kind of infrastructures and ecosystems that allow local actors, the ones who actually will benefit from the technology, and global actors to come together, this is what we're really good in. So some months ago, the biggest hurricane ever hit the island of Jamaica on October 28 exactly. And as we have these people infrastructures in place through collaborations, through our network, the Flying Labs network, through conferences we organize that bring in local actors, government actors, that bring in global technology supporters, this collaborative kind of ecosystem was in place. So in 48 hours, together and under the lead of our local colleagues from Jamaica Flying Labs, we all together, and by we, it was over 30 organizations and tech companies. In 48 hours, we put into place the biggest ever drone response after major disaster. Way before the UN agencies arrived on the island of Jamaica. It was done by the time they got there. And it was fully locally led. And all of this only could happen because all of these connections were already there. And also the roles were defined, who leads, who decides. It's not the global partners, it's not us or the international nonprofits that supported, or even later on the UN offices that came to town. It was the local government and our colleagues from Jamaica Flying Labs. So that's really important. So that's what when I kind of an interest said, building people infrastructures, it's building infrastructures for defining the roles. Who leads? Who supports? And we've really seen over 10 years how amazingly well it can work when you do pull instead of push, and when you build these infrastructures. And so my kind of thinking is also, why does this not happen more? This seeing the success of it and seeing also that the people investment is so much smaller than the technology investment because it's never going to be more than 20%. People, like, it's not nice to say, but we're cheap. We're way cheaper than technology. And we make the things happen. So why does this not happen more? And what I kind of learned over time why this doesn't happen more, it's two things. First of all, it's so easy to streamline technology. And that's what funders want to hear. You can time for it, your project can have a timeline. Technology is very easy to streamline. People are messy. We can be streamlined in many ways. We have our own agendas, we have our own speed, and this does not really do well with the systems in place, with the funder systems, how we actually measure success of a project or of an implementation. People need time. So this is something that really holds back why this is not done more. It's the underlying systems, the funder systems, our mindsets that have to change to say, it's okay for people not to be streamlined. It's okay for people to be messy, because at the end of the day, it's us, the people, who will make technology work and last. It's not technology. But that kind of thinking needs to change around.
Thanks so much, Sonia. And speaking of tech that's being pushed, I don't think we can get off the stage without talking about AI. And Grace, you know, AI is perhaps something that is being pushed, perhaps even over investment in people that Sonia was talking about. Now, there's obviously a lot that we can say about AI, and we have 3 days to talk about AI. But Grace, I really wanted to hone in on what you've said to me in the past, in the importance of Africans being creators and not consumers of AI. Tell us more about that and what you at KICTANet are doing about making Africans creators of AI and why that's important.
Okay, I think I made that comment out of an event that we were invited in San Francisco. And they had this AI camera that would, you just feed it with your details and it generates an image. And for some reason, those are, the African women, there were 3 of us, it generated the same image. Nigerian attire. In Kenya, we are not so big on that African attire. And we all looked the same. So it meant that either there isn't enough data or AI has not been trained to capture that data and generate that image. However, for Kenya, I want to say that it is different. Kenyans are utilizing AI like you cannot believe it. AI, like even ChatGPT, knows our Kenyan accents. The way we speak English with our accents, it's able to capture that and actually do the stories. So what we did together with the Ministry of ICT and with support from the British High Commission is that we got a grant and did what we called AI Challenge. So we asked people to put in their ideas into some form of competition to articulate an AI idea that they wanted to do. And out of the entries that came, in 2024, we were able to award 16 AI challenges. Each challenge got 2 million Kenya shillings, about 20,000 USD. Each challenge, and they were mostly from the universities. We also awarded another 16 last year, again to consortium, so university, some startup, some local initiative. And what we saw is that there is no lack of talent in this country when it comes to AI. There's a lot of use on AI, different use cases that are happening. And so I I think I just want to say that, just checking on time, that what also emerged is that we need resources, sustained resources, so that we are not only getting a grant for this year to administer the challenge, and then after that, nothing else. And those who had, put in their applications have no further funding to take this idea forward. So we need sustained resources. We need sustained research, because AI is a different game on a daily basis. So we need consistent research. We need, utilization of local resources to come up with local ideas and how those can be addressed. And I think finally we need, that's from mostly, multi-stakeholderism. What are these African concerns that need to find their way into AI? And then working very closely with the government, with the Ministry of ICT, with Parliament, how do we come up with frameworks, policy frameworks that support local innovations, that support young African innovators, that support startups in this country, and that support, how that is going to grow and actually be supported consistently. I think Mr. Kuria pointed out that some of these innovations will not only come from San Francisco, Silicon Savannah, but some are actually in this country, and that is what, that is what we are on, including the policy process that we are working together with the ministry. Thank you.
Thanks, Grace. So let's continue to talk about the path forward, right? And Fumeng, you particularly asked me to make sure that we not just talk about the problems, but the path forward. And so with digital transformation being an accelerator for you at UNICEF, paint us a picture of what, from your perspective, responsible, locally led digital transformation looks like when it's working. And what is the opportunity in this moment that we don't want to miss?
Thank you, Nora. To us, a responsible, locally digital transformation effort would look like that, the digital services that go out from the governments to the beneficiaries and the stakeholders, child focus, is inclusive, it's safeguard, and it actually takes care of the life journey of a child. Although it is easy to say than done, we do know that there are a lot of pilots in every country. How do we move from doing small little pilots in the county, in the district, to really thinking about how might this become a systemic change? It is a leap of faith, or is it something that we can do collectively? So a lot of the change of the mentality, of the mindset, needs to take place as well. We are also seeing that the time is now. I've mentioned that over 60 countries has AI policy. Over 50 countries and counting are actually implementing and adopting the notion of digital public infrastructure, and we have quite a few sessions about that in these 3 days. So these are government-led and funded by IFI's initiative that we don't see it 10 years ago. So that's the opportunity that we can really think about how to move away from pilots to system-level implementation that can very much embrace local digital transformation, that lift everyone up in the process. And there's a lot of thinking about open source first, interoperability, building the ecosystem. Think about us as we're not only the community, we are the ecosystem that drive this. And I think with that, that's going to be transformative for, building the local digital transformation that's really talk to the ground roads that we are speaking about, because governments are ready. That's what we are seeing.
Thank you. So I want to put the question to all of you on the panel. You know, if we can't have the funding back, right? Digital transformation isn't slowing down. What is the one shift in mindset, in structures, in practice, in how we work that this sector has to make in the next 2 years? Sonia, we'll start with you.
Thank you. I think it's the shift is about thinking about value first. Does the technology actually create value? If yes, who creates the value? Is it the tech or is it the people? And what are the roles? I think it's really the mindset shift needs to be around the roles too. Also, what you just said, you know, when the shift that we need, it's a lot about the roles. The role of local actors, the role of global supporters, and the role of technology. And to understand who brings in what value and how can we, all of us, together with technology, do this together.
Grace, over to you. What is your perspective? What is the one shift that we need to make?
I think for me, and I don't need to belabor this, is that we need stronger investment in digital infrastructure, access to databases for African languages where AI is concerned, and affordable computing resources to allow us to continue innovating. And lastly, to work as stakeholders, you know, in a multi-stakeholder way, where government, businesses, civil society, and everyone who thinks they have a stake in ICT must come together and sit on a table, not as competitors, but as people who bring different ideas and perspectives into this huge cake that's called ICT 4D.
Thanks. I love that we're a cake. Deepmala, round us out.
Would say that technology that expands people's choices and protects dignity. So rather than designing for people, decide with people. Because voice without decision making is not going to change the system. And let me end by saying, I believe we all know what to do. We just have to take the first step, take the risk, think of technology as a means to an end, and not be afraid of sharing, giving away, opening the doors, inviting more people in the cake. The cake is big enough, we all can have it. Let's share it equitably if we want to enjoy the taste.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to my wonderful panelists. Really appreciate you all. And let's have 3 days together and enjoy some cake.